All right, let's talk Battlefield 6. The hype has faded. The honeymoon period is over, whether you're looking at Twitch charts or even the Steam charts, even the sales board with now Call of Duty Arc Raiders out. Besides the competition, the cracks, of course, have come to light. Today, we're digging into some of the growing frustration across the community around both Battlefield 6 and their new free Redsec mode, from painted vehicles, slow updates, small maps, a lot of bugs. People have been speaking out. Of course, I've been playing the game every single week, Battlefield 6, as well as the Redsec multiplayer. I've done some of the competitions. They have some bigger ones coming up as well. So I'm definitely coming at this from the perspective of a fan. I've really enjoyed the game for the most part. It actually ended up doing even better than I anticipated it doing. Battlefield's typically always a pretty niche game, but I do think it's good to have some discussion on it. And I'm curious of what you guys, a lot of you that watch my channel, think about it, because obviously a lot of you guys play this game too. Are you still playing it? Were you interested in Redsec, or have you gone on to the new other games? Battlefield 6, though, did have a very strong start. Like I said, much bigger than I originally thought they were going to even have. Even when the open beta released, it looked like the series was back. Over 500,000 people played the open beta on Steam alone. The reviews were glowing. People were excited about Battlefield again, although there was some skepticism of how the bigger maps were going to be. We didn't get to see that directly. The EA executives came out with a lofty goal of wanting 100 million players on this game. And then when the game did launch, it looked like they were on a good pace to maybe even hit that goal. Battlefield 6 launched strong, even 747K concurrent players on Steam, which is huge. That even beats Call of Duty's all-time peak on Steam. The reviews were glowing, and people were excited for Battlefield again that I hadn't seen it so long. Even the Battlefield 4 launch was quite rough when that came out. Battlefield 1, there was definitely a lot of hype, but even that was a very long time ago. Even only a month later, though, that population was down 60%. Now, I even was saying the launch is probably going to be the high point for this, especially this type of game. It's not really something that's typically going to grow a whole lot, although there was anticipation for Redsec. I will say probably not from the majority of actual Battlefield players. It was more people from other communities excited for that, which that's how they could boost their player count, to be fair. But the Steam reviews went from quite positive to mixed, and even taking a look at it now, Battlefield 6 is showing mostly positive reviews. Battlefield Redsec is showing mixed. Although this would also be the players who only have Redsec, I believe, not the people who have also bought Battlefield 6. I, for example, play Redsec through the Battlefield 6 game. I also couldn't pull the Steam charts for Battlefield Redsec, but nonetheless, it's fair to say there's been a drop-off. Also, part of that is just people will play the campaign and then probably not even play the multiplayer anyways. A game doesn't also have to last forever for it to even be a good game, but some games also do maintain a player base, especially a live service one. That's going to have updates that already had its new season with a couple maps released specifically for multiplayer, and they're still trying to hit that 100 million player goal. At least I never saw them confirm per se that they hit that. Maybe on some quarterly calls, we'll see some updates on the investor side when they give updates there. But from the negative side, from the side of where people have left the game and lost interest, maybe, what have people been saying there? There's the Battle Pass haters. Every time you're booting up the game, seeing a full screen ad for the Battle Pass. It's become a staple in a lot of games, especially free-to-play ones, which is a little different considering this is a $70 game that you also have to buy. $25 Battle Pass Pro slammed on top of it. Other items in the store are still there. Probably a lot of people who ended up getting Battlefield may not have even been playing games over the last couple of years. The last time they might have even tried a Battlefield game was back in Battlefield 1 or even Battlefield 4, which did have premium passes and other things, but when you were buying those, you were buying the new maps that were coming out. You're getting content for the game to play rather than skins. So also could have just been a bit of a wake-up call there. There's obviously been constant complaints about mechanics. We'll get into some of that. The biggest thing that I've seen from a lot of people is the state of the maps. I even saw a map overview comparison and how small these are to other maps. And this is not even necessarily talking about this in comparison with 2042. Those maps are designed for 128 players. They're humongous on scale. This is even relative to what we've seen from, historic Battlefield 3 and 4 maps. But I think the biggest shift, and I even saw this before all of this was out coming along was the release of the Battle Royale. A lot of longtime fans feel like they were kind of baited in with nostalgia and then hit with a Warzone game and Warzone monetization. And they are not happy about it, understandably. I think, and what I've been saying is there's a lot of people who just want a Battlefield game again, especially from that niche, the people who played the games in the past. And I think, got a lot of that in the Battlefield 6 game. I've talked very highly on the game. I've put a ton of hours in and enjoyed it. But I think there's a feeling that it would have been great to have even more emphasis and resources put on that versus an entirely different mode of something that, especially coming from that core Battlefield player, they're not really even interested in. So then, did we see that? Well, coming into Battlefield 6, even after the launch, outside of the monetization and everything, just talking about the gameplay and the mechanics, we saw a whole lot of problems come up very quickly. One of the main ones, in my opinion, was the progression, which took a very long time for them to fix. Some of the unlocks, how difficult they were, how the missions were not even tracking appropriately, people being forced to go to Portal to try to complete stuff, of course, the Portal XP grinds. A lot of this we had already seen play out in Battlefield 2042 as well. For me, a big aspect of it was just I couldn't even progress weapons from playing the objective or how the game was kind of designed to be played. Instead, I had to play counter to, and still do, completely avoid the objective, avoid helping the teammates. If I want to specifically level a gun, just focus on getting kills with that gun, since that's the only thing that really levels it up. That was one of the reasons I really didn't level anything up at the beginning, because I spent all my time flying, which was even worse and still is not in a good state. Less than a week after the game's launch, my friend Jack Frags posted a video that I'm sure you guys have seen if you were following the game, where you would paint an enemy jet, any vehicle really in the sky. And once painted, there was a bug where the IFVs could use their laser designated missiles and shoot those. The jet that it is coming in on, or helo, doesn't receive a warning. Even if they do flare it successfully, it doesn't matter. It goes right through flare. So there's no counter that you can even have to this. The IFV was the by far best anti-air vehicle, but it also didn't stop with that. Even if you were in a jet and locked on with your laser-guided missile there, or if you're in the helo gunner seat with the painted target AGM missile locking on there, they couldn't be countered. They also didn't have the stealth jet anti-air missiles in the game when it first launched. And when they did put it in, there was no warning that they were ever coming in, and also couldn't be flared, which means that if there was a stealth jet in the sky, you could easily take out every single air vehicle, on top of course, being able to spawn camp the jets. It didn't work out great. Now, they did fix a couple of those things. It took them a couple weeks to do that, which made it even worse. That was one of the reasons that after the first couple days, week of the game, I stopped flying vehicles completely. You didn't see that in my streams or videos anymore. I was waiting for them to fix it. With the mid-season update in middle of November, I did hop back on and try out the 2 new maps that came to the game. They fixed some of those problems, but we also still don't have the jet radar. So when you're flying the jets, to see the TAC map bigger, to see where the other jets are in the sky and kind of understand what's going on in the battle, have good dogfights, doesn't exist. But on top of that, the anti-air vehicles and even IFVs using their tow missiles, whatever, can sit back in their spawn and lock on and successfully control the whole battlefield from their spawn with these. This is made even worse, though, because there's no way to go kill them. Even if you're playing as the attack jet, which counters the anti-air relatively well with your AGM missiles, the bombs that you can drop out, if you try to do any of that, the problem is those missiles will instantly detonate whenever they go into the enemy team's spawn. So essentially, you have an anti-air vehicle that's really unkillable back there, completely countering the sky, and it makes it super boring to fly. So I tried it myself for a couple games. It was really fun when there wasn't somebody sitting in their spawn doing it the whole time, but the majority of the games that I did play had somebody there, and I pretty much just left those games when they happened. So one of my favorite ways to play the game, unfortunately, is not really feasible. I guess my overall point, it's a lot of nitpicky detail, is that this stuff would have been great to have hotfixed very quickly, even within a first week, rather than waiting a full month before getting some of those first updates done. Some of them still not necessarily being done either. And if that's too specific of a point, there's also been a ton of work that needed to be done on the way bloom is handled, even the way that the aim is handled, from small jumps, over correcting, a lot of those things, again, were handled. It took a month or so to do it. They've done a couple passes on the way that Bloom works now. I think a lot of people have found the changes, especially from the most recent update, to be great. But of course, a lot of people will not come back to experience that. Likely they will when they have additional new seasons. Maybe people will try it out again. And if it's in a better place, that could bode well. But it's not really the type of change that's going to bring in a massive influx of new players like we saw off the original launch of the game, right? But also alongside Season 1, this is when we got Redsec, Redacted Sector, their Battle Royale alongside their Gauntlet mode, which launched very buggy. I will say it was quite a full package, especially compared to other Battle Royales that I've played, tested. This was a more full release style of game, and that's what I think they were going for. I think a big part of it too is they were going for the stealth launch. They didn't tell anybody about it, which I think partly was so that it can help fuel more sales off of the, buy the full game, since this is a free-to-play game that anybody can get into. But I think they were also going for that Apex Legends style launch. Obviously, Vince Zampella, creative Respawn, part of Apex Legends, now taken over on the project here for Battlefield 6 and Redsec. Makes sense. I've seen a lot of people saying, though, that then leads to less marketing. They needed more attention around this mode in the first place. And personally, I have found Redsec to be so much fun, from the destruction, the way the zone works, the rotations, the actual balance of the weapons, having to deal with the bloom, having some more specific roles for each of the weapons, not having to deal with currency and cash. The buyback system is very easy. Having the second chance at the beginning is great. I think the overall aesthetic design, the fire is sick. And it's just been nice to have some new content in a big map Battle Royale style game, at least for myself, who plays a lot of these games. You can tell they're trying to bridge the gap between Battlefield and Warzone, with some of the Warzone DNA there as well. Obviously, a lot of COD X people working on this game too, while still featuring Battlefield's core identity, having the classes, all the gadgets. Making this a standalone free-to-play game mode obviously was a complete another step. I think this is where they were really trying to make that push for 100 million players. But when it released, it put off some of the fans that were the hardcore Battlefield fans, as I was discussing earlier. A lot of people upset, saying that this is not what Battlefield even is. The core player base not interested, the dev time wasted on this. But they did have a separate studio, Ripple Effect, who was essentially the spearhead for this entire project. Still takes resources, of course. And again, I do think that this went over better than I at least anticipated, especially with how many Battle Royale games have come out and how many have just completely disappeared or been shut down or brought back so many times. It's such a hotly contested market. But right off the launch, I mean, one of the hottest drops, going to the golf course, you go right next to it, and all of the houses there, you're just glitching through the entire wall. Looks like the house is still together, but it's actually not. You're falling through the floors, walking through walls that don't actually exist. Even in downtown, there was a lot of areas that were like that. A lot of complaints for hit registration. My biggest thing was just the actual audio. The audio in multiplayer seemed like it was actually quite good, but while the effects are very big and boomy, the amount of times that you just don't hear anything is crazy in this mode. Part of that, especially at the end game with the amount of fire and destruction and everything going on, I kind of get that. If you're playing towards the edge of the zone, this is the deadliest zone. But this is happening when you're not even near the edge of the zone. And of course, the not even having solos, there's nothing that you, have these crazy moments with like proximity chat or anything on. Maybe it doesn't work in this type of game. Maybe that's a totally different element, but I know it's been something that's also been incredible in Arc Raiders, for example. Even in Warzone, the prox chat is just a lot of fun. And it's just it leads to more of that sandboxy, anything could happen style thing that I kind of would expect more so in a Battlefield game rather than a super competitive, esport type thing, which is also the direction that they're working towards with their Battlefield Elite series. This was a direction, for example, that PUBG went back in the day when that first came out. And I know a lot of people love the competitive side of that too, but it's also not as much what I'm personally interested in. I wish that the, Portal mode also was just better than what it was. I feel like there's just so much potential. And this was the big thing that I was saying even before this came out, is that it really has to come out polished, great. Everything's got to be there. And they seem to have gone for the still going to have bugs, still not going to be completely polished, but we're going to get it out the door, see how it goes. And this is where I think that first impression is always very important in today's day and age, where people don't spend a lot of time on a game. Once they played it, they don't really ever go back to it. And that's, again, where I think Arc Raiders, for example, has just absolutely nailed it. I just did a video talking about that, so it's just, I've been playing a lot. It's top of the mind. And touching back on the progression for a second as well, it takes so long to level up and unlock a gun, which, of course, in this game also is part of it, that you need to actually go to a weapons drop, get your best weapon out of that. I almost think this would be better off if it had just been, you could go to the weapons crate and get a weapon, but still apply these weapon upgrade kits that are on Redsec to upgrade your weapon and just leave it so it's pure floor loot, kind of how like PUBG is. But this is, I actually really like this system where you could choose the attachment you want, how you build it. It makes it so you're not looking around for every single attachment, managing all your builds. It's actually quite a good system. And before I touch on the map itself, a finishing thought on Portal, this has been one of the most advertised modes in the entire game. And I think what has held some of the most promise for the game. There are such insane custom editing tools, not only for the actual game modes, but also for the map itself. Granted, those map edits are just for the multiplayer side. I still think there's a lot of potential and longevity that you can pull out of this, but since launch, it's been plagued with issues. The custom maps that people have even made, the top-down doesn't even look good, and that's the scoreboards for these modes that especially people custom make. You don't even know if the game's ended or started or what the objective's going on for. And that's all assuming you can even get into one of these custom games. Now that the game has been out for a couple months, I actually have seen quite a few popping up on my feed of like a little trailer for some genuinely amazing modes that I've seen on Instagram that I've not actually seen in the game, because you have to find the code, plug it in. It's not something that's just featured on the board. And I think maybe it even has been, but it's been too buried to where people don't see it. You're hit with the, battle pass instead of the go play this cool new mode that somebody came out with. A couple people did come to my stream, sent me some codes to use. I actually did play a couple custom maps that were designed. During that window was when XP was off, so you couldn't really get XP on that. They had to gut the entire bot farming system, where if you were playing Portal with AI, which you kind of need sometimes to populate the lobby to play it, they make it so you really can't get any XP, you can't level up your weapons and such, because so many people were just playing Portal only to level up their weapons, because it takes so long in the multiplayer, which again, I've talked about all of this back even from 2042. And even once they brought bots back, people still have continually been finding ways to get into the game and just farm bots to level up their guns, because it's just so much faster and easier, because it takes so long to level the guns. And so I think this mode still has a lot of promise, but it's just been plagued with so many issues, and just like it's most of the way there, but it's just not done. Even for the Redsec side of things, you can't make any custom maps or anything with it, but you can do custom rules. I try to set first thing up was a sniper only match where everybody in the lobby can only use snipers, but setting that rule set up, it didn't actually work when we got in the game. There's a bunch of other guns there, and now I've got to use the honor system of everybody just sticking with snipers. That's not going to work. The best one that I set up was a hardcore lobby where there was no map. It took a couple of iterations to figure out what do these settings even mean. The settings that they have there don't fully explain what they are even changing, which I don't understand why you wouldn't put like a really descriptive paragraph of what exactly is being changed with any of these settings that are out there. But nonetheless, I figured it out through multiple iterations, but I haven't really been able to come up with anything else that's super fun. And even trying to do that, you couldn't play solos on it. You could do even 5-6 man lobbies, but you still, even in Portal, couldn't do solo. So then we try to do duos or quads, and I was trying to play with some of my buddies and get us on a team, but you can't select your team either on that. I could try to change some of the duration of the zones, increase the bullet velocity. I tried to increase the player movement speed. That sounded like a cool slider. Maybe we go super speed, but you could only increase it by 1.2 times, and it was kind of slow. I tried to do it so there was no custom weapons in the game, so it would just be like playing, the game I discussed earlier, where it's just everything in game, only no advantage for grinding weapons and everything. It's just floor loot. I couldn't do that either. So there's a lot of stuff that's like almost there, but it's just not there yet. And so then I think probably people try it, they see that, and they're like, oh, well, okay, I guess this is not for me, which I think is unfortunate. I wished we had the incredible first experience with this game and with the Portal mode. And that leads me to the maps, because even on the map side, I've seen even other creators. I saw Jack do a video talking about the biggest multiplayer map in Battlefield 6, which was taking the main Redsec map and turning it into a gigantic conquest map. But that is not going to be in the normal rotation of maps that you can even queue into, and finding those buried down in the portal servers, or even trying to find hardcore. I even just tried to play the hardcore servers on Battlefield 6. I think maybe it was just a week where it wasn't working, but I tried it for a couple of days, and every time I went in, it said the lobby was marked as hardcore. I saw it on everything. It was named that. But then I went in and it was not hardcore. And these were the official servers. Chat was trying to give me codes. I tried multiple of them, but in all of them, health was normal, no friendly fire. The map was there. It wasn't hardcore. So I kind of gave up on the hardcore side. And I think that's an entire community that, of course, was secluded to only Portal, on top of even being able to play these other maps that people have recreated, they made tweaks for. I would have loved to play Liberation Peak with a wider play zone, with more objectives. You could go down to that forest on the side down there. But I'm never going to get just a random lobby to queue into that. And so I think there's this like big discoverability problem with the maps and getting people to actually get into them and play them, outside of the people that just go to the top of the featured thing and just hop into some TDM or close range conquest or whatever is showing as the recommended feature. And I don't even know where it stands right now, if you can even get XP, even if it is only players in those maps. There was a couple of the hardcore servers that I even tried to join, and it said on them 0 XP, and there was no bots, but it said 150 for match only. So that means you can't get weapon XP. If you even want to play the game to try and make some progress, you can't do that. You got to purely just play for fun, which I think is great, honestly. But when it takes, 100 hours to get to one gun to level 50, just playing normally, because you got to get so many kills with it, especially if you don't play great in the first place, you got to ignore the objective to level that gun. It's just crazy how the progress even works. The maps that then did come out, we did finally see what those big maps were, but it became evident to everybody once they got in that it really wasn't that big. The actual gameplay itself feels very tighter, very funnel heavy. A lot of walls, even on the perimeters, not going too deep in enemy spawns, especially for the rush mode being very tiny. Breakthroughs a bit bigger, but also still very narrow. And I do think there's definitely space for that in the game. In fact, I really like a lot of those maps, even the infantry-only conquest on Empire. I really like that. If it was even easier to find infantry-only game modes for all of the other maps too, I would probably play more of that too. But I think there's also want in a space for that bigger style. Great that we have Firestorm. Maroc is the biggest other map that we have, and that's one big map. And I think this is where people wanted to see even more of that. I know for me, this is what I've been saying for ages, is what keeps me enthralled and coming back to multiplayer games is constant new experiences, seeing the big destruction, having a lot of new experiences to play. Once I've played all the maps and modes, had a couple good games on it, then I'm like, all right, that was fun. I had a lot of fun on this, but I'm not going to continue to play that. I've played so many of the multiplayer games myself. It's one of the reasons that I don't really stick around playing Call of Duties a lot, even Battlefield's off their launch. I was even saying before this, I'll probably play this game for 50 hours. People are like, oh, whoa, what do you mean? And to be fair, I've already put in way more hours than that. It exceeded what I was anticipating off of the launch. But that's where, to me, if we got constant new maps, even like what they did with Battlefield 4, where we saw 4 maps brought back from Battlefield 3, immediately dropped as DLC for this. That to me would have been sick. And in fact, we've already seen some of that. And within the first week, I was playing North Shore Canals on Battlefield 6 from Portal. We saw Rust added and a couple of things, but it was a very small segment of that. The scoreboards weren't even showing up really properly. You could only play specifically the guy that had designed it, which was, by the way, incredible. It was kind of like a gun game, but it wasn't the real gun game mode. There's no real free-for-all modes, and it's like there's a lot of stuff that's almost all the way there. Even the North Shore map was just one section of it. It wasn't the entire map, which incredible he could even make that in the first place, but that's what I would want the devs to make, the whole kind of experience. Great, we've had 2 maps added, but still haven't really been able to fly on those because of the problems that these balance elements are. People have been begging for more of the open spaces like Zavid 311, Goldman Railway, so massive with the train going across it, the amount of vehicles, your Caspian borders. I mean, there's so many examples even from the old games. Doesn't even necessarily have to be bigger than what those even were. And I do think Eastwood, the multiplayer map that's kind of that same vibe as the big Battlefield Redsec map actually was really cool. I really, really like that map. I had a lot of good games in the Hilo actually on it. That one played really well. And I still have been hopping on the game. I still have been enjoying it. But they're also still not done with the game. They're continuing to add more maps, updates, and I think most of the Battlefield games off of their initial launch are not the smoothest in reality. This has been one of the smoother ones. Are they going too broad? Too crazy with the addition of the Redsec? Obviously, they have a campaign this time. I still never even have played through it, but I heard mixed things about that as well. And realistically, I think a lot of the people that play this type of game, I've said it a lot, but it's kind of a more niche style of game. And I think a lot of people will stick with it. They're going to retain the core audience for at least a section of this. But now they've also got the rest of the competition out. Arc Raiders is out. Black Ops 7 is out. Tarkov is out. It's bound to see at least some player hit from all of that competition at the end of the year here. We'll see how that continues to get updated. We've got the Warzone update, at least coming around the corner as I'm recording this. That will bring all the Black Ops 7 integration into that. Later on, they're going to add finally a new map. It's been a couple years since they've really added a new big map to Warzone as well. Maybe this is putting a fire under them to try and pull some of their audience back from it, because they did lose at least some, but people got very mad at me saying I think Call of Duty's still going to do fine. And sure enough, they're still doing fine out here as well. They also are going to have another game coming out next year and the year after that. So we'll see if the updates that Battlefield release can compete with that, as those are going to be, again, another full launches. Even if you don't consider them full launches, they sure do. Interesting times, though. I thought I'd sum it up with this video, let you know some of my thoughts. If you want to catch me live every weekday, talking about all the games, playing them myself, drop by, let me know what you think. Do so, or leave a comment here or on any of my other videos. I got daily videos up on my Plays channel from those streams. If you can't catch them all, just want to see some of the best moments, check it out. Thanks so much for watching. That's for this one. So I'm at 64, over and out.